Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today we're going to be talking about the top 10 best characters for the 12 most popular CTPs in the game. Just a quick PSA as we go, guys. I'm trying to keep this video as short as possible, so that's why I'm talking kind of fast. One, this is just my personal opinion, so you're welcome to equip any CTP on any character, play the game the way that you want. Having fun is the most important thing. Two, we do not rank the Patience or the Transcendence because they're very, very weak CTPs. They're meme CTPs, they're AC or Shadowland fodder, and they're just better off being used for those things than actually debating whether they should go on character A or character B. And we still do not cover the Veteran, even though it is much more accessible now because it is still an extremely rare CTP. Additionally, in past videos, I have stated reforging and stuff like that in detail. In order to try to trim down these videos, I won't be mentioning reforging as much, but that doesn't mean that reforging isn't still important. I will try to just quickly mention it, but I'm not going to go into great detail like I usually do because it just makes the video too long. And a big reveal on the first CTP, the CTP of Insight, for why I want to keep this video short is because I've actually added 5 characters to both the Insight and the Liberation. So I apologize for lying, but it's actually the top 15 best characters for the CTP of Insight and the CTP of Liberation, and then top 10 for the rest. And this is mainly due to the fact that we have so many good support type characters, and we have all of the changes with ABX, creating 28 days now instead of 14, creating many more permutations, requiring many more supports, and still with a completely non-overlapping list. So 30 characters across Insight and Liberation. I'm still missing some characters. So shout out to Medusa, shout out to Ghost Panther, shout out to a couple of other characters that I could not put on this list. I tried to rank them from best to, like, not best, but like most valuable to sort of least valuable. And it is a snake ranking. So first is Cyclops, 5th is Misty, 6th is Valkyrie, 10th is Morgan Le Fay, 11th is Enchantress, and then 15th is Angel. So that is the ranking there. It does start to include some PvP picks at the end there, especially with Franklin and Angel. So keep that in mind. This is not only about ABX, ABL, World Boss Legend, but also about other game modes. But of course, there is some overlap there, but that is how it goes. For the Liberation CTP, again, I tried to not have any overlap whatsoever. So it's not to say that, you know, you have to give Colossus a Liberation. It's just that if you're pairing Colossus and Wasp together for a PvP team, whether it's Timeline Battle, Team Battle Arena, Conquest, whatever, you don't want to give them both the same support CTP. So if you gave Wasp a Liberation, you're going to want to give Colossus or whoever else you pair Wasp with for a second support, something like an Insight, for example. So for example, for me, for TBA, I pair Rescue and Wasp together. So I'm going to just quickly go to TBA and show you guys. And so because I did that, I gave them alternating CTP. So you can see here, Rescue has a Liberation, and then Wasp has an Insight. So that is why the characters, there's no overlap there, and that's what you want to achieve. But of course, how you achieve it, how you go about it is up to you. Again, number one, in my opinion, the most valuable is Satana because of all the ABX, ABL days where she can support Jean, she can support Scarlet Witch, she can support Mephisto, she can support a ton of different characters. AV number 2 because of course he's the GOAT for symbiote supports, especially for PvP, but also for PvE. 5th is M'Baku, 10th is Nick Fury, 11th is Proxima, and then 15th is Beta Ray Bill. The CTP of Greed list looks almost identical to before. The only real difference is that I added in the new Ghost Rider uniform and I moved him up because he is now a much more viable PvP threat with his Savage Avengers uniform that gives him access to that iframe ignore, iframe 4th skill. We still have Adam, we still have Sentry, we have Wolverine. I believe on this list I may have moved Sentry down and Wolverine up. But basically, the list is otherwise essentially the same. You just want to go mostly for immortality characters and the odd, revive character. CTP of Refinement, aka The Egg, needs to be reforged, and the list is essentially identical as it was 3 months ago. We just haven't had many good PvP characters that can utilize anything other than a Conquest genuinely in the last couple of months, which is kind of sad. But I did add in Captain Marvel with the zombie uniform because she has shown some signs of life. She may actually be a little bit better than even Black Swan. She might be up there with Captain America, but unfortunately, yeah, we've gotten a lot of either reflect characters for PvP, or we've gotten PvP characters that are mostly support or burst damage, but not really ones that can utilize this very tanky CTP well. Onto the Judgment, and this one has probably seen more changes recently than it has the rest of the year. Miles jumps to the top spot here because of how good his zombie, or not zombie, but his villain uniform is. He's absolutely amazing. Ghost Rider is there as well with his new uniform. You could probably put him in second place if you wanted above Rogue, which is very, very good. And then we put Zeus in there, although I do think that competition is better for him overall for ABX ABL, and I think Rage is a little frustrating. I think Judgment will actually pair quite well, although it will be worse for ABX ABL. And then the rest of the list is pretty much unchanged because, again, not a lot of elemental damage characters that we gotten that can really utilize this well. Maybe Hellstorm is missing, perhaps. Change the list for the Authority CTP, which has to be reforged, mainly due to performance for TBA. So this doesn't necessarily apply to all content. Obviously, it's a PvP CTP, but I've just seen a lot of really good performance from some of the lower tier characters like Doom, Apocalypse, Shalabal, Emma Frost, Wong, Quicksilver. And so the Authority is a nice budget option for them, giving them damage reduction, giving them a little bit of a stopgap so they don't get one-shotted and this kind of thing. Just keep in mind that with the recent changes to ABX ABL, you might need to pivot Invisible Woman to a damage dealer, in which case she would need a Rage, so she might not be applicable for the list. But yeah, try to hit this for a Reflect character if you don't have something better like a Conquest, and reap the benefits that way. And even somebody like Wong actually does quite well with an Authority and pairs quite well with someone like Doctor Doom, and that applies to both TBA and Conquest. When I said Conquest, I meant the game mode, not the CTP. Moving along to the Destruction, technically it needs to be reforged. Not much changes here at all. I just added in Hellstorm because he is proc friendly, but genuinely this CTP is dying and nobody uses it. Like, people just don't use it anymore. Once you get past the 5th or 4th or 5th World Boss Legend, they just don't take enough damage from these CTP procs, and you need a competition or a Rage or a Judgment. So it's a bit disappointing. It's kind of frustrating that this one and Energy are kind of dying for the most part. And this one also doesn't have the added benefit of being very good for using on tier 4 strikers the way the Energy has. But for now, it is what it is. Which brings us to the CTP of Energy. And yeah, it's really good as a striker, and that's why you see options there like Black Widow, Golden Gate, Wolverine, Deadpool, even Adam. You can use it on the characters, sure, but they also make very, very good strikers, particularly Black Widow, Deadpool, and Wolverine. Wolverine kind of at the top of that list. Again, we added in Hellstorm for proc friendliness, and then Sharon Rogers is there. But also keep in mind for Sharon and for Gamora, and maybe even for Bucky, they may be needed for your account for the new ABX ABL restrictions. So then you may want to pivot them to a Rage or a competition build. And then the CTP of Regeneration needs to be reforged, and there's really nothing to say here. It's a very, very weak CTP. It's on the ropes personally, and outside of Alliance Conquest, this really doesn't see any use in TBA, Otherworld Battle, or Timeline Battle. So it is very, very niche. It's just a couple of steps above like a Transcendence or something like that. It's really, really not good. You'd much rather have a Refinement than a Regeneration if it puts the power of a level of it into context. It's honestly at the bottom with Destruction for how weak it is, and so you mostly just see it on support characters or kind of like meme options for like Hulkbuster or Gladiator. The Rage CTP, which probably has seen the most increase in value recently, because if you don't know, the new Infinite Battle Weekend ABX ABL game mode where you fight a bunch of rotating world bosses that spawn in as you kill the one before that, is basically a Rage only game mode. Competition CTP really struggles once you get up to the tens of thousands of points in that game mode. And so if you want to score well in the weekend ABX ABL, which happens twice a week, every week now, you need at least one heavy hitting ABX ABL character with a Rage, and preferably the highest quality Rage you have, whether that's a Mighty or a Brilliant. So I have tried to lessen the overlap between Rage and Competition, because Competition really struggles in the weekend. And if your best scorer has a competition, or if all of your best scorers have competitions, let's say, you're going to see a massive drop off in your score once you get to the weekend, and especially once the weeks start piling up and that score gap starts to add up. So I'm actually recommending Storm. She's probably one of the easiest, if not the easiest, to play for this new game mode, this new weekend ABX ABL game mode, this Infinite Boss. I can't remember, I think it's called Infinite Boss, Infinite Battle, something like that. I'll have a more detailed guide, whatever description on it soon, but I just wanted to put it out there that I think Storm is the best for this, because she'll cover the no restriction, and she'll also cover the blast day for you. You're still going to need one for speed, combat, and universal, but of course Storm can't do that for now. As for the rest of the Rage list, it's pretty straightforward. Gladiator, we do have Venom here now because there are more combat days where you can use either Venom or Crescent, so you kind of have to take your pick because it has to be a human, so it can't be Gladiator. I still have Thor there, more for more for World Boss than ABX ABL, but he could probably get lost on the list and be replaced by somebody like Magneto or Gambit there, because they're both male mutants. Again, ABX ABL pros, I guess, or like hardcore players will disagree with this top 10 and kick some characters out in favor of a more ABX ABL focused list. But again, because this is a kind of a generic top 10, I have to balance it between ABX ABL, World Boss, and all of the other PvE content, you know, even dispatch farming and stuff like that, tier 4 striking, blah 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 blah. So it has to kind of reflect that. But in addition to that, I also reflect the fact that Bullseye has multiple days now rather than just one day of ABX, so his stock has actually risen tremendously. The Conquest CTP, the best CTP for PvP, needs to be reforged, and the list looks something like this. I did shake it up a little bit. We moved Null a lot of the way down because I know some people use him with a Conquest, but he's just so much better with a Greed. And with the zombie survival stuff, it really does help out if you don't have a Greed build on him and you're struggling to hit a stage requirement, that might be the difference maker. But of course, we added in Mephisto here because when all the other metas are banned, he's actually not bad for things like Otherworld Battle. He always guarantees you at least 1 or 2 kills because when he dies, his skills are lingering and they will chip away at an opponent's health who's just standing there waiting for him to revive, and then you can get easy kills that way. He also, shout out to Commander, pairs quite well with Thanos lead in Team Battle Arena. So if you're struggling to put together a fifth team this season for Team Battle Arena, consider, it's a very expensive team, but consider Thanos lead with an Authority or a Conquest, and then Mephisto as a secondary with a Conquest as well. I don't think any other PvP CTP is really going to work for him, genuinely speaking. Like, I don't think Mephisto is a PvP character. I think he's PvE through and through, but if you have to go PvP, Conquest is quite nice. I think Shalabal is tremendously underrated, so I actually have her on the list as well. I think she's fantastic with a Conquest, very, very strong. And then Ghost Rider just continues to dominate with a Conquest as well. Really, really nice stuff. Last but not least, we come to the new CTP, the CTP of competition. It needs to be reforged. You want that Fury proc up at the top. And remember, it doesn't really work well on tier 3 characters. They kind of have to be tier 4. So I do apologize for already having Zeus on this list, but I'm not going to make another list in a week when Zeus gets his tier 4. So you just got to trust me that when Zeus gets his tier 4, he's going to pop the hell off in ABX ABL with a competition. I already have faith. Hades already does that, so that's why I think they're both going to be on that list. Mephisto is by far the best option, the most attractive option for a competition, so I think Mephisto and Storm are the two in your mind. If you only have one Rage, or whatever, one Brilliant Rage, Mighty, goes on Storm. You only have one Brilliant or Mighty competition, boom, it goes on Mephisto. If you have a second one, boom, second Rage, Doctor Strange. Second competition, boom, Luna. And then after that, you can decide. That's why Scarlet Witch is third on both lists, because if you get a third Rage or you get a third competition, you can decide which one you want to do. Some people like the Rage, me personally. Some people prefer the competition. It really is what you prefer and how it more, you know, closely aligns with your gameplay. I mean, there are people that will say, oh, this one just scores better objectively for high-end accounts or for players who can consistently score certain things. Absolutely. Not going to disagree with you there. But you also have to take into account in this case, because I'm doing more of a generic overview, how it applies to your playstyle, right? So, for example, Miles Morales, absolutely going to be on this list because as a tier 4 striker, competition is going to give you the highest score output. But some people are going to want to use him in content, so maybe they want to pivot to a Judgment or something like that. Again, it depends on your playstyle. I personally like competition on Gladiator. I know a lot of people swear by Rage. I like it. I just use a Mighty. I'm not going for a max build or whatever. I just find it easier to play with him. You get an extra second of damage window. Instead of 5, you get 6. It's kind of speak for themselves with Ghost Rider and Jean. Honestly, Jean is a tiny bit of a placeholder here. You could put other characters. There are a lot more options for ABX ABL now with the expanded 28-day list. You could put Black Bolt on the previous list that I didn't have for Rage, and you can shuffle things around. Again, it depends on your roster. It depends on who you have and who you want to use for those days. The community hasn't even settled 100% on exactly who to use for every single day. Like we mentioned earlier, Invisible Woman could potentially, or Sharon Rogers, Gamora, etc. Bullseye versus Zombie Miles. So there is still some debate going on. It also depends on how your builds look and how your account looks. And so with all of that considered, hit me up in the comments down below. Let me know what you think of the top 10 best characters for each CTP. Thank you so much for watching the video. Smash the like button if you enjoyed the content, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.